Get out of the car. Now, Ryan Cooper's hand rested on what looked like a police-issued sidearm. His partner, Blake Harris, positioning himself to block my escape route along the frozen lakeside trail. Both wore uniforms that screamed law enforcement from 20 feet away, but the badges were wrong generic shields instead of proper county identification. My attorney training kicked in immediately through the December cold. "What's your badge number?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite adrenaline flooding my system. "Which agency are you with?" "HOA, Security Services." "Ma'am." Cooper stepped closer, breath fogging in the winter air. "We're conducting a routine compliance check. I need to see your identification and lake access permit." Lake access permit. There was no such thing in Riverside Heights. I'd reviewed every HOA document when we moved here 3 years ago. My military background had taught me to recognize ambushes. And this had all the hallmarks: isolated location, coordinated positioning, fake authority designed to intimidate compliance. "I'm not required to provide identification for trail usage," I said firmly, my hand moving toward my phone. "If you believe there's a violation, file it through proper HOA channels. I'm leaving now." Harris moved to physically block me, his hand dropping to zip ties attached to his belt. "Ma'am, you need to cooperate with this investigation. We have reports of unauthorized activities, and you're coming with us for questioning." The threat was explicit now, not a compliance check, but attempted kidnapping disguised as official procedure. Cooper reached for the zip ties. That's when 3 years of military combatives training took over. I sidestepped Harris's grab, using his momentum against him to send him stumbling toward the frozen lake edge. Cooper fumbled for his weapon, the fake pistol, that looked convincing until you noticed the wrong weight distribution. "Drop it!" I commanded. He didn't. I closed the distance in 2 steps, deflecting his weapon arm upward while delivering a precise palm strike to his solar plexus. Cooper's breath exploded outward as the fake gun splashed into shallow water. Harris recovered, extending a collapsible baton with a metallic snap. I ducked under his wide swing, grabbed his weapon arm, and executed a joint lock that forced him to release the baton with a yelp of pain. Cooper tried to rejoin the fight, grabbing for my jacket. I dropped my center of gravity and hip threw him onto the gravel trail hard enough to scrape skin but not cause serious injury. Harris attempted a blind side tackle. My foot sweep, combined with his momentum, sent him tumbling into soft earth beside the trail. 45 seconds. That's how long it took to reverse the ambush completely. I secured both men with their own zip ties, retrieved my phone, and dialed 911 while keeping them under visual supervision. "This is Sarah Bennett at Riverside Heights, requesting immediate police response. 2 individuals attempted to detain me using fake law enforcement credentials. Both suspects secured." Cooper, still gasping, made the critical mistake. "You don't understand who you're messing with. This comes from the top of your HOA. The admission would prove invaluable." Within 8 minutes, Deputy Martinez arrived. Multiple civilian witnesses appeared with phones recording, and Cooper's phone buzzed with an incriminating text: "Status report. VA needs confirmation of compliance. VA. Victoria Ashford." Our HOA chairwoman was about to have a very bad day. But let me back up 3 weeks to where this nightmare actually began. The Riverside Heights clubhouse sat like a glass monument beside our community lake, its floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting December frost on water that had drawn families like mine to this development. Tonight, though, The serenity felt manufactured, almost aggressive in its suburban perfection. I watched residents file into the conference room, their conversations, creating nervous energy that would soon explode into something far more dangerous than anyone anticipated. Victoria Ashford commanded attention the moment she entered. At 50, she was striking in a way that didn't belong in a suburban HOA meeting composed. Expensively dressed despite the December cold, she wore a crimson red blazer that fit like it had been tailored specifically for her frame, draped open just enough to reveal a black silk top beneath the V-neck, cut deep and deliberate, almost defiant against the winter chill. A matching red pencil skirt with a subtle slit, paired with glossy red heels that clicked sharply against the polished floor. Her steel gray hair was pulled into a severe bun that announced authority before she spoke a word, and her lips, glossy red, precise, curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, but a warning. She looked like someone who'd built an empire on suburban compliance and had no intention of surrendering control. She'd been HOA chairwoman for 2 years, transforming collaborative governance into her personal fiefdom. The woman didn't just enforce rules, she manufactured them, pulling obscure regulations from nowhere to justify whatever power play suited her agenda. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria began, her voice slicing through conversations with practiced efficiency, that crimson blazer catching the harsh fluorescent light. "Tonight we're implementing crucial security enhancements for our lake access areas." She gestured toward a PowerPoint slide displaying uniformed figures that looked suspiciously like actual police officers. "Our new enhanced patrol program will ensure compliance with community standards through immediate intervention protocols." The corporate doublespeak was deliberate wrapping authoritarian control in bureaucratic language that sounded official while revealing nothing concrete. 2 strangers flanked Victoria's position near the screen. One was heavyset, with nervous eyes constantly scanning resident faces. The other maintained rigid military posture despite civilian clothing. Neither introduced themselves, but their positioning suggested they weren't random homeowners. They stood with predatory alertness, cataloging residents rather than following the presentation. My husband David caught my eye from across the room. His military logistics background had taught him to recognize threat assessment behavior, and these 2 were definitely assessing threats. I raised my hand as Victoria clicked to the next slide. "Excuse me, but this proposal lacks legal foundation," I said, my attorney training cutting through the intimidation tactics. California Civil Code Section 1500 establishes clear limitations on HOA enforcement authority. You cannot authorize personnel to conduct vehicle stops without explicit statutory backing. Victoria's smile never wavered, but something dangerous flickered behind her eyes. That crimson blazer seeming to pulse with barely contained fury. "Mrs. Bennett," she said, my name dripping with contempt. "I appreciate your interpretation. However, our legal counsel has thoroughly reviewed these protocols." She gestured toward a folder that remained conspicuously unopened. The heavyset stranger photographed my license plate through the window with his phone, quick, practiced, almost invisible unless you were watching for surveillance behavior. Why would legitimate security need photos of residents' vehicles at a public meeting? "I'd like to review commission certificates and insurance documentation," I continued, refusing to be dismissed. Community members have the right to verify credentials of any enforcement personnel. Several residents nodded agreement, their faces showing first doubts about Victoria's authoritarian expansion. Victoria's jaw tightened imperceptibly as she made angry notes in her leather portfolio with sharp strokes. That crimson blazer trembling slightly during the meeting. I noticed security cameras had been repositioned from normal coverage patterns. Instead of monitoring general seating areas, they now focused specifically on sections where vocal residents sat, residents like me who had previously challenged Victoria's increasingly dictatorial policies. The meeting concluded with Victoria announcing the enhanced patrol program would begin immediately, regardless of resident concerns. Security is not negotiable, she declared with finality. That crimson blazer bright under the lights. Those who have nothing to hide should welcome increased oversight. The threat was crystal clear. Walking to our car afterward, David and I felt hostile eyes tracking our movement from clubhouse windows. She revealed more tonight than intended. I said quietly, "None of it suggests legitimate governance. Those two strangers were building target files." David replied, "Military intelligence gathering, not community security," within days. We'd understand exactly how right he was. The harassment began exactly 72 hours after the HOA meeting. I found the first violation notice tucked under our windshield wiper Monday morning through December frost, printed on official-looking letterhead that made absurd accusations feel legitimately threatening. Violation notice, vehicle positioning, non-compliance. Parking angle 14 degrees off, optimal positioning, recorded at 2:37 a.m. We'd been asleep for hours by Wednesday. 2 more citations appeared with similarly ridiculous charges, irrigation timing violations despite no such restrictions existing, and unauthorized lake access for my morning jog along trails every resident had used freely for years. Each notice bore the signature of Deputy Security Officer, a position that had never existed in our community. I spread the citations across our kitchen table like evidence in a criminal case. "Look at the detail level," I said, pointing to timestamps and measurements. Someone's been documenting our routines with systematic thoroughness. This isn't random, it's targeted harassment. The notices referenced HOA subsections that didn't exist in our actual governing documents, creating parallel rules that only Victoria's enhanced patrol seemed authorized to enforce. Thursday afternoon brought visual confirmation. A black patrol vehicle began appearing near our house with suspicious regularity. Making slow passes when I left for work. Returned for lunch. Came home each evening. The driver wore sunglasses and carried what appeared to be official radio equipment, but the vehicle bore no legitimate markings, only generic community patrol decals that could have been printed anywhere. I started timing these appearances, precisely when I left, precisely when I returned. The surveillance was methodical. Friday morning revealed an escalation that crossed into genuinely threatening territory. Fresh footprints in soft soil beneath our kitchen window, professional-grade boot treads positioned perfectly to observe our breakfast routine. The prints were deep, suggesting extended surveillance rather than casual trespassing. Then I found it beneath my sedan's rear bumper, a small GPS tracker with magnetic mounting. Someone had crawled under my vehicle during nighttime hours to plant sophisticated real-time location tracking. I photographed everything with methodical thoroughness, building documentation that would prove invaluable. This is conspiracy-level harassment. I told David, examining the tracker's serial numbers. Professional security companies don't plant surveillance equipment on residents' cars. This is criminal stalking. Our mailbox showed evidence of tampering. Our outdoor security camera had been subtly repositioned to create blind spots that hadn't existed before. Saturday brought confirmation. We weren't imagining the escalating surveillance. The same black patrol vehicle appeared 3 separate times during a single afternoon, each pass timed to coincide with our outdoor activities. When I worked in our garden through December, cold, the vehicle slowed to a crawl as its occupant made deliberate notes. When David retrieved mail, the driver raised binoculars. The message was unmistakable. We were being studied, cataloged, prepared for whatever Victoria's program had planned. Sunday evening brought the final piece of evidence that would prove crucial. Our neighbor's motion-activated camera had captured clear images of the GPS tracker installation, showing 2 figures in dark clothing working beneath our vehicle during early morning hours. The footage was grainy, but sufficient to establish criminal trespassing. As we prepared for another week of harassment, neither of us predicted how quickly the situation would explode into open confrontation. The evidence we'd carefully documented would soon become the foundation for a legal battle, exposing the criminal conspiracy hiding behind our HOA's authoritarian facade. Friday afternoon stretched before me with deceptive tranquility, perfect December weather that made our lakeside community feel like a postcard. I'd finished morning legal consultations and decided to clear my head with a solo run along the trail, winding around the lake's edge. The decision seemed innocent enough, just routine exercise to shake off the week's accumulated stress from Victoria's escalating campaign. The trail showcased natural beauty that had originally drawn families to this development: ancient oaks forming canopies, open stretches providing lake views, reflecting December sky like polished glass. I'd been running the same 3-mile loop for 3 years, but today carried an undercurrent of tension that had nothing to do with physical exertion and everything to do with being observed by unseen watchers. The ambush location had been chosen with tactical precision. A narrow trail section squeezed between the lake and dense pine grove created a natural bottleneck where escape routes were limited and visibility reduced, far enough from residential areas to ensure minimal foot traffic, yet close enough that official vehicles wouldn't seem out of place. At exactly 3:15, as I rounded the bend, I encountered the trap. 2 men in what appeared to be official security uniforms stood beside a black SUV positioned to block the trail's continuation. Their stance and positioning immediately triggered threat assessment protocols. This wasn't coincidence, it was deliberately orchestrated interception. The taller one stepped forward, hand resting on what appeared to be standard law enforcement equipment. "Ma'am, I need you to stop for a routine compliance check. I'm Ryan Cooper with HOA Security Services. And this is Blake Harris. We're conducting lake usage permit verification." My instincts activated immediately. Cataloging details that didn't align with legitimate authority, Cooper's uniform looked convincing from distance, but revealed critical inconsistencies upon inspection. Badges with generic symbols lacking identification numbers, radio equipment missing, professional mounting, duty belts carrying zip ties instead of regulation handcuffs. The entire presentation suggested amateur manufacturing designed to intimidate through appearance rather than demonstrate actual authority. Harris had positioned himself to create a flanking pattern, controlling potential retreat routes while maintaining the fiction of routine security work. "What specific authority do you have to detain residents?" I asked. My attorney training, cutting through intimidation tactics. "I'm not aware of any lake usage permits, and I've reviewed all current HOA documentation." My voice remained calm, but I'd already begun calculating escape routes and defensive positions. Cooper's confident demeanor flickered. "Ma'am, these are new regulations implemented under the Enhanced Patrol Program. We're required to verify compliance before allowing continued access. He pulled out a clipboard with official-looking forms, masterpieces of bureaucratic theater, featuring complex language and multiple signature lines that created an appearance of documentation while containing no actual legal substance. Most concerning was a section requiring personal identification information that had no legitimate purpose. I'm not required to provide personal information for trail usage covered under our community association agreements. I stated firmly, if you believe there's a violation, file a complaint through proper channels. I'm continuing my run now. I took a deliberate step forward, testing their commitment to escalation. The mask of professional courtesy slipped completely when Harris moved to physically block my path, his hand dropping to equipment that definitely wasn't standard security gear. Ma'am, you need to cooperate with this investigation. We have reports of unauthorized activities, and you're coming with us for questioning. The threat was explicit now, not harassment, but potential kidnapping. Cooper reached for zip ties attached to his belt. Harris's positioning became overtly aggressive, abandoning even the fiction of routine security work. My training had prepared me for exactly this situation, where institutional authority revealed itself as criminal conspiracy. The next seconds would determine whether this escalated to open violence. Cooper's fingers closed around the zip ties while Harris stepped closer, their coordination revealing practiced nature of what they believed would be simple detention. They had underestimated their target completely. I'm invoking my right to remain on public property and requesting immediate police assistance. I declared firmly, reaching for my phone while maintaining visual contact. This interaction is being recorded, and you have no legal authority to detain me. Harris lunged first, abandoning all pretense as he attempted to grab my wrist and force me toward their vehicle. His movement was telegraphed and clumsy, someone accustomed to intimidating compliance rather than handling resistance. I sidestepped his grab with fluid precision, using his momentum against him by pivoting and allowing his weight to carry him past me toward the lake's edge through December cold. Cooper, seeing his partner's failed attempt, dropped the clipboard and reached for what he believed was his ace, the modified airsoft pistol designed to look like standard law enforcement equipment. The weapon's appearance was convincing, but my experience immediately identified subtle differences in weight distribution and grip angle, marking it as replica. His draw was slow and hesitant, hampered by unfamiliarity with proper procedures. Drop the weapon now, I commanded, rather than comply. Cooper continued his fumbling attempt to bring the fake weapon to bear, apparently believing intimidation alone would control the situation. His confidence was about to prove catastrophically misplaced. I moved with explosive speed that caught both men completely off guard through the winter air. I closed the distance to Cooper in 2 quick steps, my left hand deflecting his weapon arm upward while my right delivered a precise palm strike to his solar plexus. The blow was calculated to incapacitate without permanent injury, exactly the force justified for self-defense against armed assault. Cooper's breath exploded outward as he doubled over, the fake pistol tumbling from nerveless fingers to splash into shallow water near the frozen shoreline. Harris had recovered from his stumble and now approached from behind, producing a collapsible baton that extended with metallic snap through the December cold. His technique was better than his partner's, but still amateur, swinging the weapon in wide arcs that prioritized intimidation over effectiveness. I heard the distinctive sound and spun to face the new threat, automatically calculating angles and timing for optimal defensive response. The baton strike aimed for my shoulder never connected. I ducked under the swing and stepped inside Harris's reach. grabbing his weapon arm with both hands and using basic joint manipulation to force him to release the baton. The technique was textbook combatives, simple, effective, designed to neutralize threats without escalating to lethal force. Harris's surprised yelp echoed across the water as pain shot through his wrist and he released his grip instinctively. Cooper attempted to rejoin the fight despite breathing difficulties, his movements uncoordinated and desperate. He grabbed for my running jacket, trying to use his size advantage to wrestle me toward the SUV where additional restraints might be waiting. Instead, I used his grip against him, dropping my center of gravity and executing a hip throw that sent him sprawling onto gravel trail with enough force to scrape exposed skin, but not cause serious injury. Harris, now weaponless but still committed, tried to tackle me from my blind side. His approach lacked stealth, and I sensed movement in time to pivot and redirect his momentum. A well-placed foot sweep combined with his forward motion sent him tumbling into soft earth beside the trail where he landed hard enough to knock wind from his lungs. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 45 seconds. But those seconds had completely reversed the power dynamic Cooper and Harris had expected to control. Both men lay incapacitated on frozen ground, their weapons scattered, their confidence shattered by encountering genuine resistance for the first time in their amateur security careers. Neither appeared seriously injured, but both were clearly reconsidering their life choices. I retrieved the zip ties that had scattered during the struggle, using them to secure both men's hands behind their backs in a display of poetic justice. "You have the right to remain silent," I said, applying restraints with professional efficiency. "Anything you say can be used against you. You have the right to an attorney, and you're going to need one for charges including assault, battery, false imprisonment, and impersonating peace officers." Cooper, still struggling to catch his breath, made the critical mistake of trying to salvage the situation through intimidation. "You don't understand who you're messing with," he gasped, face flushed. "This comes from the top of your HOA. We're just doing our jobs." The admission would prove invaluable in legal proceedings, providing direct evidence of conspiracy rather than random criminal activity. Harris, slightly more intelligent than his partner, attempted damage control. He doesn't know what he's talking about. We were hired for legitimate security work. But his nervous glances toward the SUV and repeated checking of his phone suggested someone else was supposed to be coordinating this operation. I'd already dialed 911 while keeping both men under supervision, my phone's recording function capturing everything. "This is Sarah Bennett at Riverside Heights requesting immediate police response for assault in progress on Lakeside Trail. 2 individuals attempted to detain me using fake law enforcement credentials and weapons. Both suspects secured and require medical evaluation for minor injuries sustained during lawful self-defense." The dispatcher confirmed units were en route with estimated arrival time of 8 minutes, but my immediate concern was ensuring no additional threats materialized before official help arrived. I positioned myself where I could monitor both prisoners while maintaining clear sight lines to potential approach routes through the December cold. Cooper's phone buzzed with an incoming text he couldn't answer due to restraints. The sound drew my attention to the device lying beside him on frozen gravel, its screen displaying a partial message that would prove crucial. Status report. VA needs confirmation of compliance. The abbreviation would connect directly to Victoria Ashford, the smoking gun linking this assault to HOA's highest authority levels. The sound of approaching vehicles reached my ears before I could see them through winter air. multiple engines converging from different directions. Within moments, my assessment proved correct as a family SUV rounded the bend, followed by two joggers who had apparently heard commotion. The Fairmont family had been returning from their weekly picnic when they encountered what looked like a crime scene in progress through December cold. Tom Fairmont hit his brakes hard when he saw two men zip-tied on frozen ground beside a woman holding a phone. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Tom called out. "Should we call the police?" His question answered itself when he noticed I was already on the phone with emergency services. I quickly explained the situation while keeping my phone connected to dispatch. These two attempted to detain me using fake credentials and threatened me with weapons. I defended myself and secured them for police response. "Can you serve as witnesses?" The teenage Fairmont had been live streaming their family outing and found herself accidentally broadcasting what would become crucial evidence. Oh my God. "There are like 50 people watching this right now," she whispered, not realizing her unintentional documentation was creating an uneditable record of the crime scene. Tom Fairmont examined scattered equipment, his military logistics background identifying multiple deceptions. This pistol is modified airsoft with safety markings removed. These radios are consumer walkie-talkies. Their uniforms lack proper identification. Everything here is designed to impersonate law enforcement without being legitimate. His comprehensive assessment provided expert testimony that would prove invaluable. The two joggers who'd arrived provided crucial timeline evidence. "We saw that black SUV blocking the trail about 30 minutes ago during our first loop," explained one. "It wasn't there yesterday. And the positioning seemed deliberately chosen." Mrs. Sinclair appeared from her lakeside house, drawn by unusual activity. "I've been watching from my security cameras," she announced, causing both Cooper and Harris to pale visibly. "My system records everything along this trail section, and I've got the entire incident captured from multiple angles, including 20 minutes of setup time." Harris attempted misdirection, addressing witnesses with false authority despite his awkward position. "This is all a misunderstanding. We were conducting legitimate security operations, and this resident became combative." His explanation carried no weight, given obvious evidence and growing testimony against him. The dispatcher's voice crackled through my phone, confirming Deputy Martinez was en route with estimated arrival of 3 minutes. Cooper's phone continued buzzing with increasingly frantic messages he couldn't answer. Each missed communication represented another thread connecting this assault to larger conspiracy elements. Mrs. Sinclair consulted her monitoring notes. Those two spent considerable time testing equipment and discussing hand signals before positioning themselves. This wasn't spontaneous, it was coordinated ambush with predetermined roles. As sirens became audible through December air, Cooper made one final attempt to intimidate witnesses. "You people don't understand what you're interfering with. This comes from the highest levels of your community management. When the real story comes out, you'll realize you're supporting the wrong side." His statement would become Exhibit A in proving this assault had been ordered by HOA leadership rather than conducted by rogue contractors. The growing crowd had effectively transformed what began as isolated ambush into public accountability moment impossible for Victoria's conspiracy to contain. Deputy Martinez's arrival transformed the chaotic scene into organized law enforcement procedure through December cold. His patrol vehicle pulled up with deliberate professionalism, emergency lights flashing, but siren silenced. At 42, Martinez carried himself with measured confidence of someone who'd processed countless community conflicts. but this particular call promised to be unlike anything in his usual caseload. "I'm Deputy Martinez with the County Sheriff's Department," he announced, surveying the unusual tableau. "Can someone give me a clear summary?" I stepped forward with organized presentation that came naturally from legal background. "I'm Sarah Bennett, the complainant. These two individuals attempted to detain me using fraudulent credentials during what they claimed was routine compliance check. When I refused to cooperate with illegal demands, they escalated to physical assault using fake weapons and restraints." Martinez examined evidence methodically, photographing the modified airsoft pistol and consumer-grade radio equipment through winter air. His trained eye immediately identified the amateur nature of theatrical props scattered across frozen scene. "These are serious charges," he said, making detailed notes. "Impersonating peace officers is felony offense, and assault carries significant penalties, regardless of weapon authenticity." Cooper and Harris's earlier bravado evaporated completely as Martinez read them their rights with mechanical precision. Neither attempted to maintain fictional status when faced with genuine police authority. "We were hired for legitimate security work," Harris insisted weakly. But his explanation crumbled when Martinez examined their identification documents, revealing construction worker licenses rather than security certification. The breakthrough came when Martinez accessed Cooper's phone, which had been buzzing continuously with undelivered messages. The device's screen displayed increasingly frantic communications from someone identified as VA Consulting, with message content revealing coordination and planning. "Target compliance must be achieved today per contract specifications. Read the most recent text," followed by Ashford en route to assess situation personally. Martinez's expression shifted from routine processing to genuine concern as he scrolled through message history. "This communication pattern suggests coordinated criminal activity with specific targets and timelines," he observed, taking screenshots for evidence preservation. "The digital trail indicates conspiracy extending beyond two contractors working independently. Tom Fairmont approached with the GPS tracking device that had fallen during struggle." Deputy. "This isn't consumer-grade technology. It's professional specification equipment, Mrs." Sinclair joined them with security footage showing 23 minutes of preparation, coordination, and tactical positioning that contradicted any claim of spontaneous enforcement action. The sound of approaching vehicle reached them before it came into view, moving with aggressive haste, suggesting emergency response. Cooper and Harris exchanged panicked glances as a black luxury SUV appeared at the trail's entrance through December, cold their body language indicating they recognized the new participant but weren't pleased by timing of her appearance during active police processing. Victoria Ashford emerged from the SUV with characteristic commanding presence, accompanied by a well-dressed attorney who clearly intended to control the narrative. Her usual confidence wavered slightly when she saw the scope of law enforcement involvement, but she approached with practiced authority intact, that crimson blazer catching pale winter light. "Deputy, I'm Victoria Ashford, chairwoman of Riverside Heights HOA," she announced with rehearsed professionalism, breath fogging in December air. "I believe there's been a serious misunderstanding about legitimate community security operations these contractors were authorized to conduct." Her explanation was smooth and prepared, but it contained a critical flaw Martinez immediately identified. "Ma'am, are you stating that you authorized these individuals to impersonate law enforcement officers and assault residents?" Martinez asked, his question cutting through deflection with surgical precision. because that would make you criminally liable for conspiracy charges in addition to assault and impersonation charges they're already facing. The legal trap was perfectly set, requiring Victoria to either admit criminal conspiracy or abandon her contractors completely. That crimson blazer trembling slightly in December wind. Victoria's attorney attempted damage control by producing paperwork intended to provide plausible deniability. My client was referring to legitimate landscaping contracts through VA Consulting LLC, he said, handing over documents that would prove to be final piece of incriminating evidence. Any resemblance to law enforcement activity was unauthorized and contrary to stated contract terms. Martinez examined contracts with growing interest, noting language that contradicted the attorney's explanation. These documents explicitly reference behavioral modification protocols and resistance management procedures. He observed, "This terminology aligns perfectly with criminal activities documented here today. Not landscaping services." The evidence was mounting systematically, each revelation strengthening the conspiracy case. The final revelation came when Martinez ran business registration for VA Consulting LLC, discovering Victoria Ashford as sole owner and operator of the company that had hired Cooper and Harris. The connection was undeniable, linking her directly to every aspect of the criminal enterprise, from planning through execution. That crimson blazer, no longer looking commanding, but pathetic in harsh December light. Her attempt to distance herself had backfired spectacularly. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit assault, solicitation of criminal activity, and operating an unlawful security enterprise," Martinez announced, producing handcuffs considerably more substantial than zip ties that had restrained her hired contractors. "You have the right to remain silent, and I strongly suggest you exercise that right." The arrest marked complete collapse of Victoria's enhanced patrol program and beginning of legal proceedings that would expose full scope of corruption within Riverside Heights' power structure. What had begun as routine HOA harassment had escalated into federal charges that would reshape community governance permanently. 48 hours after the arrests, the domino effect began with devastating precision through December cold. Cooper and Harris, facing felony charges that could result in 3 to 5 years in state prison, quickly discovered that loyalty to Victoria Ashford offered no protection against California's criminal justice system. Their public defenders calculated that cooperation with prosecutors represented their only viable path toward reduced sentences. The first revelation came during Harris's initial interview with district attorney investigators. "Ashford hired us through a Craigslist ad that specifically requested people willing to intimidate problem residents," he admitted, voice barely audible in recorded confession. "She provided fake uniforms, modified weapons, and detailed intelligence files on targets, including daily schedules and psychological profiles." His testimony opened floodgates to conspiracy that reached deeper than anyone suspected. Cooper's cooperation proved even more damaging. He revealed their assault on me represented the 5th such operation conducted under VA Consulting's intimidation protocols, with previous victims, including elderly residents and young families who had challenged HOA policies. "We were told these were standard community compliance procedures," Cooper explained to investigators. "Ashford showed us legal documentation that made it look legitimate, but none of us had real training or authority." The legal mapping process revealed systematic nature of Victoria's criminal enterprise. Cooper and Harris faced charges of impersonating peace officers, assault and battery, conspiracy to commit felony crimes, and possession of modified weapons for criminal purposes. Their plea agreements required full cooperation with ongoing investigations and restitution payments to all identified victims, but would reduce sentences to 2 years probation and community service. Victoria's charges painted a picture of escalating criminal behavior that had been building for months through autumn and winter. Conspiracy to commit assault carried potential 5-year sentence, while her operation of unlawful security enterprise added federal implications under interstate commerce violations. Mail fraud charges stemmed from her use of official HOA letterhead to legitimize fake violation notices. And witness intimidation charges emerged when investigators discovered threatening communications sent to residents who had previously challenged her authority. That crimson blazer now evidence exhibit rather than power symbol. The social downfall proved equally devastating to Victoria's carefully constructed image. An emergency HOA meeting convened 72 hours after her arrest drew largest resident attendance in Riverside Heights history, with homeowners demanding immediate accountability and transparency through December evening. The vote to remove her from chairwoman position passed with 78% support, effectively ending her 2-year reign over community governance. Local media coverage transformed the story from neighborhood dispute into cautionary tale about unchecked HOA authority through winter news cycles. The county newspaper's front-page headline read, "Community leader accused of running fake police scheme," accompanied by mugshot and detailed explanations of criminal charges. The coverage triggered inquiries from residents of other communities about similar harassment campaigns, suggesting Victoria's methods might have been more widespread than initially believed. Real estate implications became apparent within days as property values faced downward pressure from scandal's negative publicity through frozen December. Potential buyers expressed concerns about community governance stability, while current residents worried about legal liability from Victoria's actions conducted under official HOA authority. Multiple civil lawsuits emerged as previous victims came forward with evidence of similar intimidation campaigns. Victoria's personal deterioration was swift and comprehensive through December cold. Her husband filed for legal separation within a week of her arrest, citing embarrassment and potential financial liability from her criminal activities. VA Consulting LLC faced immediate dissolution as investigators seized all business records and financial accounts. Her personal assets became subject to civil forfeiture proceedings designed to compensate victims and cover legal costs. That crimson blazer eventually auctioned as part of asset liquidation. Previous intimidation victims began emerging with stories establishing pattern of escalating abuse spanning nearly 18 months. Mrs. Peterson, an 82-year-old widow, revealed she'd been harassed by fake security officers for allegedly violating flower garden regulations that didn't exist. The Ashton family described similar encounters involving fake violations and threatening communications after they questioned excessive landscaping fees. I coordinated a legal support group providing pro bono representation for victims seeking civil damages and criminal justice advocacy through winter months. My legal expertise became instrumental in helping elderly and intimidated residents understand their rights and pursue appropriate remedies. The support network grew to include 15 families who had experienced various forms of harassment under Victoria's enhanced patrol program. The HOA underwent complete governance restructuring, with new policies requiring transparency, resident approval for security measures, and independent oversight of leadership decisions. Revised bylaws specifically prohibited any enforcement activities resembling law enforcement and required detailed documentation of all vendor relationships and community safety programs. Federal investigators expanded their inquiry when they discovered Victoria had purchased fake police uniforms from suppliers who also served legitimate law enforcement agencies through December investigation. The interstate commerce violations carried potential federal charges that could add years to her sentence and involve FBI jurisdiction. The final revelation came when forensic accountants uncovered that Victoria had been billing legitimate HOA maintenance expenses to VA Consulting while using community funds to finance her intimidation campaigns through systematic fraud. The financial fraud added embezzlement charges to her growing legal problems and triggered IRS investigations into tax evasion and unreported business income. As Victoria's arraignment approached through frozen January, her transformation from confident community leader to desperate criminal defendant became complete. Plea negotiations offered her chance to avoid federal charges in exchange for full cooperation and restitution. But minimum sentence still included 18 months in federal prison and lifetime prohibition from HOA leadership positions. 6 months after Victoria Ashford's sentencing, as spring warmth finally melted December's last frost, Riverside Heights had transformed into something resembling the community paradise that original marketing materials had promised but never delivered. The federal judge's final ruling brought comprehensive closure to a case that had exposed corruption at every level of local governance, while establishing legal precedent for HOA accountability across 3 counties. Cooper and Harris completed their plea agreements with sentences that reflected both their cooperation and serious nature of their crimes. Each received 24 months of supervised probation, 400 hours of community service, specifically focused on elderly care and neighborhood safety education, and joint restitution payments totaling $50,000 to be distributed among their victims. Both men found legitimate employment through rehabilitation programs and issued public apologies acknowledging harm caused by their actions. Victoria's final sentencing delivered the justice victims had sought throughout the legal process. Federal Judge Martinez imposed 18 months in minimum security federal prison for conspiracy charges, followed by 2 years of supervised release with strict conditions prohibiting any involvement in community, governance, or security-related activities. The $50,000 fine represented only a fraction of civil damages she would face, while lifetime ban from HOA leadership eliminated any possibility of future abuse. The dissolution of VA Consulting LLC became case study in corporate accountability, with forensic accountants recovering nearly $80,000 in misappropriated community funds that were returned to Riverside Heights for infrastructure improvements. Additional civil settlements with individual victims totaled over $200,000, funded through seizure of Victoria's personal assets and insurance payouts from community associations' liability coverage. My election as new HOA chairwoman represented more than symbolic victory. It established governance model based on transparency, resident participation, and constitutional respect for individual rights. My first official act involved implementing comprehensive policy reforms requiring community approval for any security measures and establishing independent oversight committees to prevent future abuse of administrative authority. The security policy overhaul eliminated any possibility of repeating Victoria's enhanced patrol program while maintaining legitimate safety measures residents actually wanted. Professional security services were contracted through competitive bidding with verified credentials, comprehensive insurance, and strict operational guidelines prohibiting any law enforcement impersonation or resident intimidation tactics. Property values not only recovered but exceeded their pre-scandal levels as potential buyers recognized Riverside Heights as a community that had successfully confronted and resolved governance corruption. The transparency and accountability measures implemented after Victoria's removal became selling points, attracting families seeking genuinely democratic neighborhood management rather than authoritarian control disguised as community standards. My legal practice expanded significantly with specialization in HOA abuse cases, providing representation for residents throughout the region who faced similar intimidation campaigns from overzealous community leaders. My expertise in constitutional law and community governance made me sought-after consultant for legislative reforms designed to prevent future abuses while preserving legitimate HOA functions. The community transformation extended beyond governance into genuine social cohesion that had been impossible under Victoria's divisive leadership. Annual events, like Community Safety Day, commemorated the importance of resident rights while celebrating the neighborhood's commitment to democratic participation. The memorials served as both education and warning about eternal vigilance required to maintain freedom from authoritarian overreach. Previous victims found healing through the legal support network I'd organized, with counseling services and advocacy resources helping families rebuild their sense of security and community belonging. Mrs. Peterson became advocate for elderly rights, while the Ashton family established scholarship fund for young people pursuing careers in civil rights law. Federal investigations prompted by Victoria's case led to broader reforms in HOA regulation across multiple states, with new legislation requiring transparent financial reporting, resident approval for security expenditures, and criminal background checks for community leaders. The legal precedents established through her prosecution became valuable tools for future cases involving abuse of quasi-governmental authority. The lake where the confrontation occurred became symbol of community resilience rather than reminder of conflict. Families gathered there regularly for picnics and recreational activities, while the trail served its original purpose of providing peaceful exercise opportunities without fear of harassment or intimidation. New legitimate security personnel patrolled the area with proper identification and respectful professionalism. Standing beside that same lake on a recent spring afternoon, watching children play safely while their parents enjoyed genuine community fellowship, I reflected on the journey from victimization to empowerment that had transformed our entire neighborhood. My courage in confronting abuse had created ripple effects, extending far beyond our community boundaries, inspiring other residents to demand accountability from their own leadership. The lesson learned transcends community politics or legal technicalities. When power corrupts and individuals forget they serve, rather than rule, ordinary citizens must be prepared to stand up for constitutional principles that protect everyone's dignity and freedom. My story proves that competence, courage, and commitment to justice can defeat even well-organized corruption when supported by community solidarity and legal expertise. Justice isn't revenge or retaliation, it's restoration of balance, protection of vulnerable people, and creation of systems that prevent future abuse. Our experience at Riverside Heights demonstrates that democracy works when citizens engage actively in governance rather than surrendering their rights to authoritarian personalities who mistake power for wisdom. The water still reflects the sky like polished glass, but now it mirrors a community that has learned the value of vigilance, the power of unity, and the essential truth that freedom requires active participation from everyone who benefits from its protection. And it all started with one woman making the biggest mistake of her life on a cold December day, thinking she could run a criminal conspiracy disguised as community security and get away with it.